All right, so here we go. I'm going to be doing an interview today with Dr. Richard Mak. Um, Now, I first kind of saw his content on Instagram where he would kind of talk about strength conditioning for fighters. So I was interested in bringing him on, especially after I kind of talked about the recent fighter passing away in March. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and also what he does.
Hey,
Hey, how you doing today, sir?
good. Todd, how's everything on your end?
Oh, great, great. So, I want to thank you for time to do this. I know you're real busy. I have a cousin who's a surgeon, so I know your time's valuable. But I was wanting to know, I like to let people kind of introduce themselves, if anyone who's watching this that may not be familiar with you.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, my name is Dr. Richard Mak. I'm a physical therapist, and I am, on Instagram known as the MMA Doc. So, I started a business during 2020, really a digital business working with martial artists and combat athletes. I'm a injury and performance coach for combat athletes, and I've been working with martial artists and combat athletes, fighters for a number of years, like physically in person. But I decided to shift over to digital, and honestly, it's just been great. I've been able to expand my reach and just work with athletes around the world, and really just spreading that message of just training smarter and owning your injuries. And I'm very grateful that it's just caught on, and my popularity has kind of grown because of that.
Now, you said you started doing it in 2020, where you just that was that when you found the sport, or was it? Why did you decide to do it at that time?
That was during the whole pandemic, right? Once everything got shut down, and obviously, in my profession, we're just very in person, and there's no way around it. So I just couldn't work, and then I was just thinking of what I wanted to really do, and I was like, okay, well, it sounds like this thing isn't going away, so I was like, okay, like what am I going to do? And then I decided to just really work digitally with some athletes in the meantime, and then I saw that it's like, oh, this is going really well, and then I said, okay, you know what, I can actually really start a business with it, and really just start thinking about the deep problems that athletes really have, and really just create a service that actually addresses those deep needs. And and luckily it's just been growing because it has a message that has been resonating with a number of athletes.
Now, how long have you had an interest in MMA? Because why did you decide to go that route? You must have been following the sport or something.
I've been training Muay Thai for a number of years, I think it's probably like over a decade now. That's really like my first love, but I've worked with jiu-jitsu guys, wrestling guys, MMA guys, and everything. And I've always like enjoyed MMA as well, but it's just like I've kind of grown basically a rapport with a number of different martial artists. So I did like having the brand name like the MMA docs, because just to let them know that, hey, I don't only work with strikers, I don't only work with grapplers, like I work with both. And luckily on the roster I do have like a mix of Muay Thai athletes, jiu-jitsu athletes, and also MMA athletes and boxers as well. So
Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit because I saw you kind of commented on a story I had posted about this fighter passing away. As a doctor, I wanted to kind of have your insight into this.
mhm.
So,
So what were you gonna say?
no, I just wanted to say kind of what, having read about it, what's kind of your overall thoughts on that?
So it's really unfortunate. I think combat sports is a risk. It's I think a lot of it tends to attract a lot of younger population, so they are a little less aware of the dangers involved in the sport. So they just think like, oh, well, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna slug it out, win a belt and everything, and it's all good. Maybe I'll get a little lumps, and it's nothing major. But there's legitimate risks involved, right? People do get brain bleeds, right? So that's what happens with some fighters, where they get knocked out, and all of a sudden they have a brain bleed, and then that causes a big problem. They are doing dangerous weight cuts. I've spoken to a number of athletes. They've enrolled in athletes like that, where they'll tell me, it's like, yeah, I'm fighting a month and it's 20 pounds under, and I'm going to lose 10 pounds in a month and I'll cut the water for the rest. And they really have no structured plan about how to do it. And the thing is, when they're cutting water, it is really dangerous already, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And then they pay no attention to how to replenish afterwards. So what happens is if you are not fully replenished or rehydrated afterwards, your performance takes a dip, and then also you increase your risk of injury. So like your risk of a concussion increases when you're dehydrated. So there's a lot of risk involved, and that's the message I want to really kind of push with athletes. Like really train smarter, work with a professional, so that you are putting your best foot forward if you really want to last in the sport.
Now, can you kind of explain the subdural hematoma, kind of in a language that's
okay. Yeah, so basically
I could understand what it is.
Yeah, so basically it's like a little brain bleed. So basically something is like it's a little bleeding like under the brain, and then it basically there's no way to let out the pressure. And obviously I'm not a surgeon. There's not something I deal with, but that is something that ringside doctors really look at and be like, oh well, this person got to go right to the hospital right away, and then they'll perform like some emergency procedure and obviously take care of it. But someone that doesn't really know, and all of a sudden now they're really going out, and like it could really spell like a big problem for them. So that's why they always do those examinations on them before and after the fight to see how they're doing.
Now, is that more than likely from actual damage, or is that more maybe a result of a weight cut previous, then you're more susceptible to it?
Generally like damage, there's so many different reasons why, but obviously you will have to get hit, repeatedly hard enough, and it'll happen. So that's just something that you always have to be aware of. So you want to be as sharp as possible when you're in your fight, right? So if you are, let's say, having a bad weight cut, and you're going in, you're feeling lethargic, walking like a zombie in there, and now your defense sucks, your reaction sucks, and you're getting bludgeoned, like obviously you're not putting yourself in the best position to win your fight, but also, jeopardize your career.
Now, for an event like the UFC, which really doesn't maybe discourage that, what's the alternative? What's a way to correct that issue?
It's tricky. Like obviously, combat sports is what it is, and there's always going to be a risk involved. With the water cutting end, obviously, some promotions do have like a little plans in place to kind of cut it. Like one championship has a hydration test, so that really kind of puts the kibosh on extreme weight cutting. They have to kind of show up at their walking weight, and they test your urine just to see what's going on and making sure that you're not dehydrated. So the main concern I have with that is that amateurs are watching these fights and seeing the fighters like cut extreme amounts of weight and thinking, well, I'm going to do the same thing, and it's no problem. But the thing is, like, there's no plan. They have no idea when to call the cut off, and it spells a lot of trouble. I've actually spoken with athletes that passed out and ended up in the hospital because of it.
Now, your plan, when you started doing it, maybe talk about a little bit of the plan that you had for like if I came to you and said, okay, this is what I want to do. What kind of thing, what kind of plan would you give?
A plan that I give for making weight?
No, just in general, like an athlete comes to you and says, what kind of service?
Okay, yes. So, generally, so like on the strength and conditioning end, we generally just kind of discuss about what's going on, and I really have like a detailed conversation with them. I really just see what's going on, and generally they'll have issues with overtraining, or they're just lifting and just feeling too sore for skills training, or they really don't know what they're doing. They're lifting like a bodybuilder or power lifter. They're doing a lot of cardio, and there's no real structured approach towards it, and they're still gassing out, and generally their eating isn't that great. Sometimes like they may eat quote unquote clean, but they're not really eating enough to perform as an athlete, and they're just neglecting their sleep. So generally, like once I find out what's going on with them, I will kind of create a plan that will really kind of address all those things. So basically like have them on a structured lifting program, depending on what's going on with their injuries, their goals in their lifting experience, and then really just give them a structured conditioning program that meets them where they're at with their cardio and really build them up to that level that they want to get, and really dial in their nutrition to make sure that they're eating to perform and recover and not feel trash, but also trim down to the right weight. And obviously, if they have a water cut or anything like that, I will watch over them and make sure that it is as safe as possible. And then after the weigh-in, like make sure that they're replenishing so they're going in feeling fresh. And that's happened with a lot of my competing athletes recently.
So is that something where you're physically with them X amount of days a week, or is it more like a plan where you're giving it to them?
Nope, it's all digital. We just chat right through my app, and we basically, once I create the plan, I deliver it to them. They do the workouts, they leave feedback, they send me a little data, let's say on their heart rate monitor for their cardio sessions, and I will troubleshoot it and guide them along the way about what they should be aiming for, and then tracking their progress along the way. And then, when they track their food, I can see what they're eating, I can see how much they weigh, and then basically troubleshoot things along the way. And then as their weight cut, their fight comes up and they're doing, let's say, a water cut, then I will tell them right away, like, hey, what's going on with this? This is when we start this. This is how the game plan is going to go. And then I tell them, this is, at this point, we're going to start modifying this in your eating. And then we're going to do your water loading and all that stuff. And then I will just kind of give them little details about, like, all right, this is how much you're going to need to eat and drink right after you weigh in so that you are feeling good for your fight. And then I really kind of keep tabs with them. So it's not one of those things where I just give them a plan and say, hey, have a good day, good luck with it. It's more like I'm very interactive with my athletes because communication is very important, because some things can always get lost in the details. So I always make sure that, everything's in line and just really like to the point.
Now, since you started doing it, maybe talk about some of your experiences with the athletes, maybe some things that have, there's always like maybe some trial and error. I know you're educated in the,
yeah.
I was doing it, but maybe you've already had kind of doing it, looking back on it.
Yeah. Athletes, working with them digitally is not for everyone. You have to be a very disciplined type of athlete, because some athletes work well with a coach that's just right in front of them and just bark it out. I'm like, hey, do it, one more rep and everything. Obviously, it's not like that with me. It's more like, hey, you have to have that type of personality that's, hey, you know what? I'm willing to do the work when no one's watching, right? And generally, those are the athletes that do really well with me. And once they really follow that instruction and they're very coachable, and I say, hey, I need you to do this and this, and they're like, all right, you got a coach. And then when they do those things, I have a pro MMA fighter like that. He's very dialed in. And basically, all I have to do is just watch over it and just give him little reminders here and there. And then he just really takes off with things. But there are other athletes that, they don't really want to communicate. They'd rather spend their time on Instagram than chat with their coach. Or they'll just see my workout program and just completely start modifying and all that stuff and not stick to the process. And that makes it difficult. So you have to have a certain type of personality to really thrive with like an online coach.
Now, when you started doing it, how many people was it kind of a big reaction at first, or did it take a while for you to get?
So you know what, like, I started everything from scratch, just like a handful of athletes that I just knew that were friends and everything. And I would start working and, basically just kind of getting the little testimonials and social proof and my message out there. And then all of a sudden, when athletes and fighters started seeing what I've been telling them and basically with my content, they reached out. And then once they started working with me, then they started to experience a difference. And then they start putting out testimonials, and then some of their friends or training partners will hit me up. And, luckily it's just grown a lot. And, obviously I have friends on social media. Let's say I'm the owner of the Muay Thai memes account. He always shares my posts at times. I get followers. And generally, once they see like my content and the message that I push forward, they generally get interested. And once they want to start working with me, then they really kind of see what it's like to train smarter. And it just kind of grows from there.
For example, like Mike Dolce was kind of front and center in the UFC for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Familiar with him, but I don't really see him around much anymore. So I was just kind of wondering, in this whole world of people that train athletes and the kind of stuff that you do, I'm actually kind of seeing you more than him. I know he does some other things, but I'm just wondering kind of why a strength and conditioning coach or a dietitian or what might disappear from the scene.
Uh, Everyone has their own reasons. I don't know exactly what happened with Mike Dolce. It could be personal, it could be something happened, it could be politics in the game, who knows? But um, it's not really a concern for me. All I just focus on what I have to do, and I think the one cool thing about just my business is that I always just care about pushing the message of having athletes train smarter and just owning their injuries for the long run. Because what I see on social media that is so popular right now is not exactly what athletes really need, and I really kind of push a realistic approach towards what athletes really need. So and I'm always thankful that it grew. So the one thing that I would like to push is like that training pipeline worksheet that I kind of mentioned to you. Basically, that's just a way for athletes to kind of really look at what's going on at the different aspects of their training, because they think that, oh, well, I just do skills training, I lift some weights, all good, right? It's like, no, there's a lot of different aspects. You have to look at whether you're balancing your skills training with your strength and conditioning, your nutrition's in place, your recovery's in place, your injury management. And basically, once everything is dialed in and balanced and you're not overwhelmed and it really kind of fits into your life, generally you do well, because people are just overtraining themselves and working jobs, not sleeping, and they're just trashed all the time. And they really cannot have a career when they're just trashed and injured all the time.
But could it be something like what I'm asking is, would there be a time where we might see you with some athletes that are at certain events or something like that?
Maybe, maybe not. I've had actually like fighters from one championship or anything like that hit me up. But the thing is, they always want me to sponsor them, and I was like, dude, like I don't do that. Like I believe that you should pay me for my time. Like I don't, because I don't believe in sponsoring athletes. I think that athletes won't take it seriously when it's free, and also like it won't allow me to dedicate myself the way I should. But if I'm just giving it away. So, those things kind of generally fall through because they're so used to getting things for free. But I'm more than happy working with just pro athletes or amateurs going to pro, and then they climb the ranks and they're just seeing like the benefits. And really, that's all I care about. Like, I don't really attach myself to any specific athlete, organization, name, or anything like that. It's all about the message.
Maybe we could talk just a little bit, because I know you have some things maybe like as a program that you don't want to give away, but maybe we could just talk about the basics of weight cutting, some of the things you see that fighters are doing wrong.
Some couple things that fighters are doing wrong for their weight cuts. One is that they are waiting for fight camps to really trim down, so they treat it like a fat camp instead of a fight camp. Fight camps are really to fine tune your game plan and really just peak at the right time. And generally, when you are trying to lose weight during your fight camp, basically you're cutting calories that you need really for all your training sessions and strength and conditioning. So you're going to feel like really terrible. And a number of them will do keto. They'll do keto and pull out all their carbs and everything, and they feel terrible during their fight camp training. And then also when it comes time for their water cut, they really just have nothing else to pull out. So they're just already depleted from that aspect. Some of them are just training dehydrated. They don't really monitor their hydration levels. They're working out in sauna suits and just trying to sweat out as many pounds as possible. And it's kind of crazy. And then by the time they actually have to do that physical water cut at the end, there's nothing left. And then they just pass out because they're just so drained. That's another aspect of it. And another aspect that athletes do wrong is that they pay no attention to their replenishment. After they weigh in, all of a sudden they think it's a buffet. They just eat whatever they want and just gorge and stuff and feel terrible. And all of a sudden they wake up feeling terrible, and then they put a terrible performance in the ring. Or they are thinking that I'm going to be super healthy, and they're just eating salads and really not replenishing properly, and they feel terrible as well. So there's basically certain things that you need to focus on replenishing properly, whatever you pulled out, to make sure that you are recovered well and feeling sharp for your fights.
Now you talked about the hydration test, so maybe talk a little bit about how that's different than like someone who's weighing in at the UFC, for example.
Well, one championship, like it's like a urine test, and they just kind of look at like the solute, like whatever is going on in the urine, and basically, they can tell if you are dehydrated. So when you're dehydrated, it implies that you've been cutting a decent amount of water. So obviously, that's a good way for them to kind of limit these like crazy water cuts. Because I think UFC, I don't think they do anything like that for hydration testing. So that's why you tend to see like a bigger water cuts going on in there.
Now, there was a documentary. I haven't talked to the filmmaker yet, but I plan to. And he was working with, I forget the fighter's name, but the UFC actually monitored her cut. They wanted her to cut down. And she ended up not making the weight. They ended up cutting her. And she was the champion at the time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So that's something where, what do you think about that? Where there's a situation where like the UFC is actually directly involved with trying to help an athlete get down because they want them to fight it a different way, you know?
Yeah, I don't exactly know that story, but there's just so many dynamics involved. Like obviously, for people that have been in the fight game for a long time and they've been a fighter or been around gyms, there's generally a lot of politics going on. So every organization has their own little quirks. Every fight promotion has their own little quirks in politics. And I can't really like comment directly on what's going on there. But.
So maybe like for you, it might be easier to just not be involved, but just help the athletes, but you don't have to be at the events and involved in all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like to stay like at a distance. I mean, obviously, if the event ever help comes and they want me there, then that's cool. Like it'll be a cool experience. But I kind of value just like time away, time with family and everything. And I enjoy that I'm able to help fighters make weight. Just checking them on my phone. Like I don't really have to be there and watch over them and really just they still have smooth weight cuts.
Now, as we're kind of winding down the interview, why don't you talk about, I know I heard you talk about an app and also maybe about the stuff where people can go and find like your website, app, these kind of things.
Cool. So yeah. So my app, I have the THEMMADOC app. Is basically my training app or training platform that I have athletes on there. So generally, when athletes enroll with me, I send them an invite. They create an account on there. We chat on about what's going on with their training, discuss a strength and conditioning program that works for them in the schedule, and then I publish it, and then I really kind of check in on them as well, and I really kind of educate them to be a smarter athlete. So I will educate them more about conditioning and why strength training is a certain way, what you should be aiming for with your recovery, and what you should be aiming for when you're eating and weight cuts and water cuts. And basically, I'm always happy that athletes are just kind of like learning and training smarter along the way. So yeah, if you are like interested, yeah, go onto my Instagram page, the THEMMADOC. You can definitely sign up for my free training pipeline worksheet. Obviously, it'll ask questions about what's going on with your training and see if everything's balanced. And then obviously, if you're interested, we can always chat and really kind of see what it's like to work together. And I'm very interactive with my athletes and really just give them an individualized approach that really kind of complements their busy lifestyle, because generally athletes don't really make as much money. Only the top upper tier is actually making a decent living in combat sports. The rest are generally working jobs and having a lot of other things that they need to take care of. So I make sure that I have a program that really fits into that and not overwhelming for them while still getting the gains that they want.
Now, can they download your app from like the App Store, or is this something that is more?
So if they when they enroll with me, then I send them an invite to download the app and really kind of create an account, and then we interact from there. there. So it's not one of those apps where you download and then all of a sudden you can just see everything. It's really more like, hey, when we're directly working together, then I will send you that invite. You download the app, create the account, and then you will see everything on there. And basically, it just has videos about how to do your exercises, your programs on there, and if you have any uncertainty about how to do a certain exercise or anything like that, record yourself, send it to me. I give you a form check and really make sure you're doing things properly. But the one thing is, like, it's not one of those programs where I just give it to you and call it a day. We're generally always working with each other. I'm checking with you during the week to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward for your training.
Now, are there any people can go to?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Anything else that you have that you're providing, like other than what you've discussed with the pipeline?
Yeah, so basically the main thing that I really provide is the training pipeline. For athletes that are really interested in, let's say, where they're at with their cardio, there's no testing. So generally athletes are just doing random cardio. So I always have my athletes do a heart rate recovery test. So if you were to follow me and just DM me like, cardio, like recovery test or anything like that, then I will just kind of chat with you and then send you a heart rate recovery test and see where you're at with things. And basically that actually helps me determine how I should program conditioning programs for my athletes based on what they need and how they do with it, instead of just running 10Ks like a couple times a week for no reason or doing a bunch of HIIT workouts.
Now, where can people find you on the social medias that you're using?
On Instagram at THEMMADOC. So once you follow me, generally I always interact with my followers. You can always DM me and then we'll chat from there. Or generally, like, if you follow me, I will probably at some time send you a DM to say what's up, see how training is going, and see if you may benefit from working with a coach.
All right. Well, I really appreciate taking time to do this. I know that you're busy, and if you ever wanted to do something again, or talk about something further in the future, I'd love to have you on again. But,
sure, man.
I really appreciate the time.
Cool. Thank you, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and I appreciate talking to you, and just thank you again for taking the time.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.